So, what's the secret to getting the decent scores on students' evaluations then? What have you done in your subject?
Well, for starters, I've reduced the exam weighting down to 30%. But I actually think the main change has been to try and focus the students away from marks and instead get them to think about development.
Sounds nice in theory, but how do you do that and still publish 3 papers a year?
There's no easy answers. I use a marking and feedback program called Review, and the time-saving trick here is to write assessment criteria as feedback statements. What was that feedback you said earlier? References with appropriate quotes integrated into the text to support your argument. And we could even put in brackets, not just bolted on at the end like a list. And we can link that directly to the graduate attribute categories and the programme or the course learning goal categories.
Yes, but if they won't even read the rubric sheet, why would they read this online stuff?
Well, here's where your feedback wording gets to them. We can ask them to use these grading sliders to self-assess against each of the criteria before they have to hand in. You can tell them that the research shows that students practicing this get better grades than those that don't.
Yes, but will they do it?
In my experience, once you've shared the fact that students who self-assess actually improve their performance, I find that the majority are keen to give it a go. And students like the idea of using the same system that the tutors are going to be using.
But doesn't that unfairly influence the tutors?
No, because the tutors only see the self-assessment after they've saved their own marks.
Well, I like the idea that students have to take notice of what I'm telling them in this self-assessment. But I still think most students will just give themselves all high grades.
First-year boys. Well, the point is that when first-year boys go in to look at their results, 2 things happen. First, they see that there actually is no mark available yet, only the criteria with the grading sliders. So they have to focus on them and the feedback in order to see how they've done.
Well, I bet they get a shock when they see their own high distinction self-assessments alongside the tutors that tell a different story.
Yes, the evidence we have is that they're much more thoughtful when they self-assess the second time. The challenge is to keep it personal. Own the criteria by wording them with what you actually value. For example, appropriate level of jargon and explanations given the target audience.
So why would students actually buy into this?
Well, first, because they get to fine-tune their assessment by self-assessing before they hand in the work. It's reminding them what's going to count. Second, I've told my tutors that if they see a self-assessment, they should tailor their feedback to address the gap between the student's self-assessment and their own. Students get personalised feedback to help them develop. And finally, they can get a printout, a PDF of their actual progress or results in a pie chart or a graph form, and they can show that to potential employers.